For the co-chairs and my colleague, I'm Mayor Brian Hodson, Mayor Candy. Thank you all very, very much for coming out tonight. It's an honor to have you all here, and I appreciate the turnout to come out to Canby and hear what's been going on out here, and here's some highlights, and hopefully add some tidbits to what maybe you've got going on, and we can share some of our aches and pains as we've gone through some things, but hopefully it'll be an interesting evening, education filled. So thank you all again very much for being here.
I'd like to do introductions. We have a lot of actually way better turnout than I thought, and also want to make sure we acknowledge our folks that are online as well. So go around the table.
Paul Gornick, Local Edge Water Services, representing Sanitary District. Marty Gilliard, Creek Hamlet, representing the Adams. Rich Jones, City Council for City.
Sean O'Neill, Mayor of Wilson. Adam Marl, City Commissioner, Oregon City.
Todd Wood, Canby Area Transit, representing the transit districts.
Good evening, everyone. Dwight Brashear. I am the transit director for the city of Wilsonville. We operate SMART, and I represent urban transit providers.
Jamie Warrensy, super staff.
Trent Wilson, County Staff.
Sharon French, Clackamas River Water, representing water districts in Clackamas County.
Joshua Callahan, City Council, Patrick.
Valerie Pratt, Florida City Council President.
Eric Ryan, City Mawala Council President.
Patty Negro, Clackamas County Commissioner.
Joe Buck, Mayor.
Kenny Cernak, Hamlet of Cedar Creek, representing CPOs.
Michael Mills, Mayor of Glen. And members of our student audience.
Tracy Henson, Canby City Council President and alternate.
Ken Jenner, City Council Wilsonville and alternate. Minnie Garland, Gladstone City Council and alternate. And Burback, Lori, alternate for CPO. Lori, alternate. Lori,
John Sarah, TriMet.
It's Patrick Lang, Everett Wild, Government Relations Manager for the City of Wilsonville.
Peggy Muller, with Canby Area Transit.
Don Hardy, Planning Director for City of Canby.
Online.
Mary Baum, whoops, go ahead.
No, turning it over to you.
Mary Baumgardner, City Council President for West Lynn, alternate here for Mayor Bielostowski tonight.
Great. Thank you for being here. Mayor?
Great.
Oh, and
Matthew Silva, representing fire districts.
Thank you, Matt. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So if you would all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a flag over here in the corner. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. A little bit of housekeeping. We need to approve the minutes for the September 4th, 2025 C4 meeting and the October 2nd, 2025. So moved. Great. Second. Anyone not want to approve these? All right. Motion carries. Those are approved. Thank you all. All right. So as we said, we get the great opportunity to highlight some of the things that Canby has done over the last, gosh, maybe 5-10 years here. We've done a lot of work. And so you get to hear tonight from our planning director, Don Hardy, our transit director, Todd Wood, and then our economic development director, Jake Stickle. Very excited to share with you, like I said, what we have accomplished over the last 10-15 years here. And there's been a lot. Too much, I think, to cover tonight, but we'll hit some highlights. So I will turn it over to our planning director, Don Hardy.
Thank you, Mayor Hodson. We're hoping not to bore you tonight with housing production strategy tools, but we will be discussing the city of Canby and what we've gone through for housing production strategy. We have a lot of detail here. We've gone through a housing needs analysis and a housing production strategy adoption process. Housing production strategy is new. I just started back to October 1st of this year. Wrap this here. So a little background before we get into the tools.
Just pointing. And
Okay. In CAMI, what the housing needs analysis identified as about 2,300 units, housing units over the next 20 years. This is the forecast, and it's broken down by what our need is for that, which is about 30% single family homes, 32% single family, small lots and cottages. Townhomes and plexes are about 19% of that, and apartments and multifamily about 19%. Next slide. So kind of the housing production strategy piece of this, which is based on the housing needs analysis and the advisory committee recommendations, also development community stakeholder input. Those are the three components of the housing production strategy. This is a bit of a breakdown in terms of the need here. I think just highlighting some of this based on the 2,300 units, about 500 of those are low and moderate income housing units. That's where it gets a bit tricky to try to provide affordable housing. I think every jurisdiction in Oregon is struggling with this. And that really is kind of a core issue, I think, for Department of Land Conservation and Development in terms of their review of these items. The city's aspirational objectives is to try to make a dent in addressing this, but acknowledging this full on that the city can't solve this really by itself. There's many players involved. The home construction industry is involved. There's many aspects to this, but targeted wise, Department of Land Conservation and Development is really essentially looking at, are there mechanisms you can do in your code, in your development code? Are there financial ways that makes it easier to push forward those projects that are going to provide for more of that affordability? And really, I think the target in CAMI has been on more entry-level homes. I think the reality is affordable housing, that word affordable is perhaps a challenging word by itself, and really it's more about being more affordable than affordable, I guess, in the context here. Next one. So some of the challenges on housing needs analysis is pretty obvious. Probably most communities are doing the same thing. Housing is not very affordable. What we did see is actually an increase from 2017 to 2023 on rent burden factors. It was 17%. It actually went up 20 to about 25% over a few-year period. So rent burden is pretty high as well. Median home pricing can be probably still a bit less than perhaps closer to 4 million. It's still from 2022 about $560,000 for single family homes on average. Next one. This is kind of a thermometer here and really kind of intended to provide an index to what affordability kind of looks like from like employment perspectives. And these are, again, somewhat generic. But we have a lawyer, this is a bit difficult to read, so I'm going to read this for you. A lawyer, $128,000, could have a maximum rent of $3,200 and a maximum mortgage of about $655,000. An engineer, $85,000 a year salary would be a maximum rent of about $2,000 with a maximum mortgage of about $430,000. And then you get into a teacher, and this is kind of where you get into that previous slide on the low and moderate piece of this, which is really more in the index towards the teacher salary, which is identified as $67,000. $1,600 rent is maximum at 30% of someone's salary, and the maximum mortgage would be $340,000. Just gives kind of a perspective here on the target and the challenge of that. Next slide, Judy. We're also doing a comprehensive plan update at the same time as we're doing many other things in CAMI, and so this is in concert with that. And out of that vision process for the comprehensive plan. We have identified, and this is parallel with the notion of providing housing for all the ranges of incomes in the city to residents across multiple generations to move up, move in, move up, and age in place, ensuring families later thrive. So housing production strategy overview. So this was just this framework for identifying what we need to do, which are the tools and actions and policies to promote affordability. And key to this whole thing on the strategies is there's an 8-year horizon to implement all these strategies that were given from October 1st. There's a midpoint, a 4-year midpoint check-in on that, and most of the strategies that we've adopted and can be are within that 4-year check-in point. But in total, there's 8 years to fulfill the implementation, which will be through ordinance processes primarily. There is one educational component to the city of Canby's adoption of the housing production strategies, but virtually all of them will be through ordinances through the city council review process. This is kind of a breakdown, and we're hoping, you know, and target here, we're in the review process now with Department of Land Conservation and Development. We're hoping it's sufficient. We looked at many other jurisdictions. We kind of followed suit with other jurisdictions that were going forward in parallel to our update. And we feel like we've matched up pretty well, but the verdict is still a bit out there in terms of, is this enough? Is it acceptable? It's a pretty rigorous review. Happy Valley went through their review. They had a 13-page conditional letter of approval. The law went through twice and had challenges going through their process. So it's a difficult lens to go through. Development code updates, there's 10 of those, which are basically our code and how we can tweak our code to provide for that range of housing. That's one of the first slides I showed in terms of percentages of single family, smaller lots, single family, looking at townhomes and apartments, that variety of housing that we show. So that development code, get into the details in a bit here. Educational program, we have one. We have partnerships, one with Clackamas County in particular. They're the housing authority in terms of a regional agency. And then we have fee related. We added these in because Department of Land Conservation and Development was really adamant about providing fee related or financial strategies to the extent the city could provide those, which would give incentives to developers. And we'll get into the details of that. And we can display it, go right into the next slide. So these are the 15 strategies that we came up with and were adopted. First one, develop a process for identifying land upzoning. And you can see the horizon here on the right is 2029. Allow cottage clusters and residential zones, and in concert with the fact that we're doing a comprehensive plan update, and we recognize as well during the housing needs analysis that we need to do an urban growth boundary expansion. So in order to do an urban growth boundary expansion, we had to do housing efficiency measures, and so we've adopted the cottage cluster already. So this is a strategy that was all kind of going in parallel or concert, and so that has been adopted. The cottage cluster was adopted in fall 2024. We also have another strategy C, which is identify opportunities to streamline planning and developments, and adopted a recent revision parallel with the cottage cluster work. We adopted a planning and development amendment to our code as well, and now this is to be a complement to that to address streamlining. Incentives to encourage diverse housing via TUD, so that's the one I just mentioned. Modify our system development fee schedules with scale-based charges. We're also updating our system development charges parallel with the other processes that we're doing, and there will be a scalability component to the single-family homes. So that's a bit much more.
What does that mean, scale-based charge?
Scale
Development might have a lower cost per unit.
It would be basically on a square footage basis. Yeah, and the exact thresholds have not been defined, but let's say that the point of this is, everything that would be between, 1,000 square feet and 2,500 square feet would be one category. Beyond 2,500 square feet would be another category, and accessory dwelling units may be a third category.
Okay.
So that's the scalability piece of that. Let's go back one minute, sir. Then the educational components of this, which will continue to be, helping, working with developers and making them aware of the opportunities to, what they can do that would help them through our code process, and educating them. Reducing minimum lot sizes is another one, and we've done part of that as part of our efficiency measures, but it's not fully complete. And then increased building heights is another item that will be reviewed later as part of our code update, which will be starting as well. Beginning next year, we received a Department of Land Conservation and Development grant. So that'll be part of this as well. It's exploring building height increases as part of that.
The next slide.
An updated residential zone is that's related to mobile homes and making sure they're consistent with state law and making sure that they're completely outright current code doesn't address that. Update design standards, dealing setbacks, and setbacks and designs for construction elements, projects. That will again be another code item that will be looked at during our code update. Incentives to encourage preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing. Again, that's targeted at mobile homes, which would be perhaps in commercial zones. There are some that can be there in commercial zones, which does not allow for housing. We would change that to allow for that to be in a lot of use. Partnership with Clackamas County. Again, that would be looking at more regional kind of focused things with the county. And then 3 financial pieces: deferred SDC payments, system development charge payments, SDC waiver for affordable housing, and construction excise tax fee waiver of affordable housing. And I'm going to get into the details of these last 3 here in the slides. 10 minutes. So the 3 items for the financial part of Bancroft Bonding Act, which and full or partial system development charge waivers, and the construction excise tax. Next one, please. Bancroft bonding is a tool that the state allows for basically financing SDCs. We're currently working with a developer now that's doing a 30-unit townhome, fee-owned townhome unit that will be that this will apply to. Basically, it helps them on a price point. This helps a lot of local developers, not necessarily the large developers that don't really need this, but to get to a price point, it helps to be able to finance this. This would be a prime rate, so the city doesn't really lose anything in that equation. It's over a 10-year period and amortized. And so that gives them the ability where we allow them to essentially pay this over time, and we have incremental payments every 6 months. The next one is full or partial waiver of system development charges. And what was really important and what came out of the council discussion is having long-term viability of these situations, not a 10-year waiver and then you get back to market rate and people have to move out of a home. But looking at long-term basis for affordability and management structure, which would be like Habitat for Humanity, a faith-based organizational structure where you have an institution that's involved in this. It's looking at this long term, it's providing the benefit, and not a short-term benefit, because I mean, part of our discussion here philosophically is looking at more long-term and making sure that was viable over that period of time. Looking at more like 20 or 30 years versus something that would be a 10-year tax abatement. Finally, construction excise tax, and Canby's a bit unique. We adopted our construction excise tax in 1986. We're grandfathered in. This is not the same thing that the metro areas are subject to, where basically 98% of it goes to each fund that is for affordable housing. This is something we have as a part of our general fund, and again, the use of this would be subject to council approval and authorization, much like the system development charge waiver or partial waiver. Again, based on our long-term viability And the other part, again, would be related to city's financial situation, the ability to actually pull that off without causing other complications to our budget. So I mentioned our code update that we're going to be doing. We got a ELCD grant. Just received notice of that in the last 2 weeks. That's going to allow us to be able to code audit now until the next year, and then we'll do a code update the following year. The idea behind this is we need to do a code update anyway, and so these housing production strategies will also be reviewed and vetted through that process. There's also a ton of stuff coming down from the state and has come down from the state in the last 3 years. We also include that in this as well. These are just a few examples again of this graphics of the cottage clusters. We have adopted the cottage cluster ordinance, slated development modification. Those two have been done. I'll talk a bit about mixed use residential in the city that we've done already, and then traditional housing and just cottage clusters, kind of this concept, and you all are probably fairly familiar with this. If not, it's really an idea of having smaller housing types surrounded by a common courtyard. It is not necessarily a new concept. This is stuff that was done back in the 50s. They were kind of like bungalows or workforce housing to some degree. They have different names over time, but essentially it allows single family ownership with commonalities. It's kind of like a condominium, but it is set up where the units are much smaller than you would typically see, and detached versus attached in the condominium product. So planning and development, this is just a general example, not specific to DMV, but the idea behind planning and development is to incentivize, even though planning and developments are discretionary processes for a hearing process, to incentivize cohesive planning to do townhomes together with single family homes, to do single story homes for the elderly. And we put incentives in our code to allow 5% density bonus to allow for that density and within single family or 2 single family zones, or low density or medium density residential zone. That comes with the provision that there's 15% open space that's being provided, and it comes with the provision that up to 5% of units would be single level homes for those folks that are aging in place. This is an example of another item here that I think has worked well as it can be is a public-private partnership. This is the Dahlia, which is right down the street on Ivy. A mixed-use commercial building that I think is another really good form of housing for the city. I think this has been a good example of a building block as well economically for the city. Commercial seems to work pretty well on the bottom floor with 3 floors of apartments above it. There is more room downtown. The zoning in downtown promotes that. It's our C1 downtown zone. That could be another really good source. These are just some examples, not necessarily can be specific, but just the type of housing, attached product, smaller scale, kind of graduated. These are middle housing types here, which are ones that are in bad need, all the way over to the spectrum, over to the single family home on the right. But again, the idea here, I think, is to provide product and opportunity types in our code. They're not currently there to incentivize developers to do things. One of the key issues I think that it's really challenging is to do that and at the same time not lose the character of the area or what is can be. And that's challenging, especially with the state laws that are coming in on mandatory adjustments, which is the latest in a series of provisions that's for state law. Lessons learned. We did go through a sequential urban growth boundary process, so did Malala. Kind of did that at the same time they did. This has been super helpful for us. We're not subject to the allocation formulas that all the other jurisdictions are. The law is not either. And that's because we went through the sequential BGB process. They're also changing the urban growth boundary as well. That means that essentially our population from our 2022 PSU population did not have to be rechecked. Essentially was locked in place, allowing us 8 years from the adoption of the housing production strategy, which was this year, And then we will then be subject again to the allocations that are now everyone else in the metro area subject to, but it gives us a bit of organic ability to be kind of our own director here a little bit without having to be prescriptive to the exact number of units that are being developed each year. Some of the key issues, it's not easy, as probably you all know, it's not easy to provide housing that is more affordable or entry level. It's a major challenge. And some of that's financially, financial constraint issues that each city is facing. Cities face utility issues, and I won't go into that discussion tonight, but that's a challenge by itself, is having adequate utilities. And I think this evolving benchmarks for the process for housing production strategy, it went from 3 years ago to everybody did a template. It was all like kind of qualitative to some degree, to now it's quite specific on each items. And so there's housing production office that the state has created, which I think is part of that. So it's a bit of a moving target here. We're hoping to get through our process and be able to have this finished up without having to go back through and revisit that. There's a 120-day review process. The first set of comments are coming back December 8th, which is the public comment piece of that. And then we'll be receiving the rest of the review from DOCD, hopefully an approval letter or conditional approval letter back on next year, early next year. Yeah, I think that's the last slide. Hopefully more time. So yeah, that was pretty much it. I've answered questions.
When you were showing what a person making X amount can afford, does that include any form of savings? Because I'm worried there's people in that 80 to 120 that want to have home ownership. Like, does that allow for savings and the cost of taking care of a home in that number? Or is it just getting by?
It's based on the 30%. That 30% of your income is kind of the max that you should be spending.
Oh, okay, I see. They're just.
But it's still, to your point, I think that's where this kind of rent burden comes in, where more than 50% of your, that's the part that went up in Canby. It went from 17% to 25% in 2 years. That was just ironic that they're doing their process now, and you can see that index climbing, which meaning rents are going way up.
The main question, I think you maybe stated it, but so all of this planning that meets in with all the new state, they kind of have their plans and we don't have much choice in what goes where anymore.
I think the only thing we can do is try to create incentives to create character that like the planning and development piece. I think if we can incentivize development towards something as an option, as a voluntary option, but it still works better for the developer. If we have nothing to offer, I think that you end up getting this essentially the template that the state is providing. And that template is maybe not the best fit for most communities. And it's difficult, and I think all the jurisdictions are going to start to see that difficulty at the, two things. One is the mandatory adjustments, and then secondly, everything now is a type 2 administrative review, except for just a very few number of items. So yeah, planning commission or hearings officer, or almost none of that's going to go back to them because it's all changed to the land use decisions. Yeah.
So where is bankrupt bonding being used for local improvement districts? Section use that stress exceeds yet.
We have used it twice to, and it might have been used more. So we used it for an apartment project about 3 years ago. And that was, and we also did it for a commercial entity, Dragonberry, and it was about 10 years ago.
So the apartment would be rental units, the developer would be paying.
They would be paid, yeah. And what we're doing now in the current scheme of this whole exercise is we require liens, but we're now requiring liens on separate property, not the property that's single up. That's being borrowed from that way, but the separate piece of property. So the city's got assurance in that regard.
So on a developer that has purchased units purchaser would have to not only qualify for the mortgage, but they'd have to qualify for that's the fat rock bond pay as well.
Correct. And I think we're gonna see this, I mean, great question, on the scale of this, I think it's gonna be more townhome apartments for somebody singularly as an owner.
As opposed to purchase.
Yeah, I mean, you could probably get there. I don't think it's gonna be advantageous because we're choosing prime rate.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody else might get a better deal somewhere else. So, I mean, I don't think the finances, but I think that for some local developers, that might be as good of a deal. And I think what they're trying to do is turn it like 2 or 3 years, not really 10, but turn it and then the cash flow. It just allows them to, these small developers don't have a cash account in the city. That's the bottom line. They're using that as a bridge.
Okay, thank you.
Do you find that the banks in your area are supporting that home ownership in Canby?
We are not necessarily connected with that part of it, other than like seeing the land use plats being recorded. You're not really dealing with banks specifically. That's more the developers that are doing that. So I can't really answer that question. Like it appears, I would say it appears that that is the case because there's still financing going on, and we're still seeing subdivisions go in, and they're largely single family detached, traditional developments. I think we're going to see more diversification of that over time. Right now, they're still pretty much the same. There was one that just happened and they're pushing that forward as quickly as they can on the northwest side of town.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Helpful? Great. Sorry. Thank you, sir. Next, I'd like to introduce our transit director, Todd Wood. We've been very fortunate where our transit director, we've got a very good string of transit directors, and Todd has not only been the transit director, it's like,
Then I came along.
no, Todd is not only the transit director, but he's also pulled on a couple of other hats and helping out City Hall and whatnot here with IT and other things. So we've got a tremendous ask for us as a city, and as you'll see in this presentation, he and his team have done a lot, and there's a lot more to go, but they're chipping away at it, which is great. When you talk about a transit, independent transit situation like CAT. So, we're curious.
As you said, my name is Todd Wood. I've been in the city of Canby for about 6 years now, and I've been in public transportation for 23 years. This is my third official place to be. I worked about 2 years in Columbia County and 15 years for TriMet. So, I've been here my whole life. Just to give you an idea, as I said, my staff consists of myself and Heidi. We do have or had a part-time administrator, but that's it for the city of Canby's transit system. Everybody else is contracted. So all our drivers, we hire a contractor, and all our drivers, dispatchers are all contract employees, and we manage the contracts for that and make sure that they keep us on the road. We handle everything else. We handle all maintenance, all vehicles, we handle all the routing, scheduling, and they basically dispatch and drive buses. So just two of us. It's a big job for just two of us. We don't have a building. We rent. I think we're one of the only transit groups in the state that don't have our own building. We used to be located in the Cub offices or behind the Cub offices, and they tore it down for multi-use mixed residential commercial. And so we are over there by Wilco. And then of course, the transit center, which is right over here in Thriftways parking lot, was donated by the Cutsfors. And that is where our hub is. Our buses come in there also. South Clackamas comes in there and Wilsonville comes in there. We all meet there, so you can get to any of those cities from that location, which is fantastic. Just to give you very brief, because a lot of people are always surprised that Canby has a transit system. Canby is one of 4 systems that withdrew from TriMet in the early 2000s, late 90s. I think South Clackamas was first, or
They were first.
they were second. And I always get into this debate with Sandy whether they were third or we were third, but they pulled out in 2002 and felt that they could serve the city better. And in doing so, they picked up the payroll tax here in Camden at $6 per thousand, not changed it in 22 years or 23 years now that the system has been operating. But just to highlight here, in 2011, just like everybody else, the crash hurt the city very bad and the transit system very bad, since they collect most of the money from payroll taxes. Also, that's the time Betsy credits, for those of you who are familiar, close, the Betsy credits went away, and they used the Betsy credits to fund a decent portion of service. And so they had to cut a significant portion of the transit service. And we used to have 3 different buses that went different areas in the city, as well as the 99. And they lost everything but the 99 and some dial-up. And the 99 went to Monday through Friday service. It was pretty limited, and dial-ride was pretty limited. For those of you who are not familiar, dial-ride is our elderly and disabled service. It's the one that goes to their door, picks people up, takes them to the store, picks them up, takes them back. Where do we get our money? So I actually looked at this summer. This is a couple of years old. So, but we get we are rural. We're a rural transit district. So under 50,000. So we get federal 5310. That's for elderly and disabled services. We use that for dial-ride. Our 5311 is our rural intercity service. We use that specifically for the 99X. And then you have the statewide transportation improvement fund. It says 22%. It's really now closer to 16%. And part of the reason it's as high as it is because when they created STIF, they decided, much to many our dismay, that they would get rid of STF, the State Transportation Fund, that we used to use for elderly and disabled services, and wrap it into STIF. And when they did that, we lost that money, but it came into this one. So it was a bigger piece of the pie now, but it also fluctuates a little bit. And then, of course, we have our local payroll tax. I think this year we're looking at 67% of our funds will come from that. And then we charge $1 for fare only Monday through Friday, and only on the 99X, and only on dial-ride service. Our week, which is what we'll talk about here in a minute, is free, and all of our Saturday services are free right now. Okay. All right, so as I was just stating, we have the 99X that runs from Oregon City all the way down to Woodburn. It runs Monday through Friday and Saturdays as well. We have our dial-ride service. We have an interesting agreement with TriMet that was required when we pulled out of it. It said that we would provide services for folks who wanted to go to Oregon City or from Oregon City to Canby and met the paratransit guidelines. So we take people to and from Oregon City. And then, of course, we have dial-ride for just the city of Canby. We generally don't go outside the urban growth boundary, but we have an agreement right now with Clackamas County that allows us to serve a little bit further outside the urban growth boundary as their program struggles to get, I mean, there's so much unincorporated Clackamas County, it's hard for them to cover it all, so that they work with small providers to try to cover a little bit more. And then the Canby Loop, and that's really what we're going to talk about. The Canby Loop. So the Canby Loop, we started it in 2021, right in the dead of the pandemic, which seems like a bad idea. And I will be very honest with you, I thought it was a bad idea at the time. To start a service when all our services were tanking because everybody was working from home. And I will tell you, my brain was going, I don't think this is going to work well. Because we're starting service minutes, but it was on the Canby docket for so long because in 2011 they cut all those services. All we had now was the 99X, and we wanted a city service that could circulate through the city. And so we had one goal, and that was this thing needs to get to every store we can get to and every park we can get to for the people who can't drive. And so Heidi and I spent months in a bus going around and around, mapping out, we gotta go here, we gotta go here, we can't go here. And I had two main goals. I said, the only way this is gonna work is one, if this is 30 minutes. If it's more than 30 minutes, this city is small enough, people are gonna walk or they're gonna ride their bikes. Because, not in rooms like this, but generally, right? So it's gotta be quick, it's gotta be quick. We only had enough stiff funding to go one direction. So we're only going one direction. We couldn't get enough stiff money to go the other direction. And so I had it at the end of 30 minutes, and I said, it's gotta be free. And I know that gave my council heartburn when I said that, but if you really want this service to work with a city this size, you really need to make it free, because $1 may not seem like a lot to you and I, but to folks that don't have a lot, and they can walk to the store, they're not gonna spend $1. But if they can just jump on and jump off, yeah, they're more likely to use it. So we made sure we covered all the shopping centers, tried to hit most of the major neighborhoods. There's a few, obviously, if you're only going 30 minutes, you gotta cut some stuff out. So we can't get everywhere. And candy parks, that was really a big one for me, because it's not fair that some people can get to parks and some people can't. We have some beautiful parks. Community Park is right along the river. We have Maple Street Park, that's our water park. And then, of course, we have Wade Park right in the center. So we want to make sure we hit all of those. So we ended up with 32 total stops on the loop. So the loop is almost 100% funded by STIF. And I say almost 100%. STIF is an incredibly complicated program. And I wanted to stay away from the extra bonus complications that come with adding fuel and maintenance. So it pays for operations and nothing else. So a contractor goes out, operates it, sends me a bill for how much it costs, and then I use the money to pay that. And then we pay for all the maintenance on all our buses and all our fuel. And then, of course, Heidi and I salary and all the advertising. So it only pays for that. And it just barely covers it. We receive about $335,000 a year in STIP. We use some of it for Saturday service for the 99X and Dial-A-Ride, and then the loop is the rest of it. And I don't actually have enough fully this year to cover it, so payroll will actually cover the rest. Runs Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 7:41. We'd love for it to run later. We found with the money we had, we could only run 12 hours a day, no more. If we could have run later, it would be better. We did start Saturday service in 2023, and it runs 8 to 9:41. And we have 32 stops, and I put a map in your pack just to show all the different stops and how we've basically tried to map ourselves through the entire city and hit most of the major points. You can see there's some areas up here we can't hit, and most of this is industrial, there's housing there, and we can't hit as well. And, you know, there's some folks who aren't happy about it, but that 30-minute service really is important. So, again, remember I said I didn't think this would be successful, and of course I set ridiculous, unrealistic goals, and I said I want to see 100 riders a day, and they're all like, that's crazy. So the first year we only had 6,000 riders, but it started to grow rapidly. And in 2024 we had 26,000 riders on the loop. That's a 330% increase, and based on the numbers we're looking at today, we should hit close between 32 and 34,000. So here we are in the middle of the pandemic. We started service, and while a lot of transit agencies are losing riders, we're gaining riders. The other thing we found with the loop that was really fascinating is our elderly and disabled population who normally use Dial-A-Ride, those who are still ambulatory, found they preferred the independence of being able to just jump on and off the bus, because of the Dial-A-Ride, you have a call, you got to make an appointment ahead of time, you're on that schedule, you're going to get picked up at a certain time and dropped off a certain time. But if you can just hop on a bus and then hop off a bus and not call anybody, we found they like that. So our Dial-A-Ride, which we were doing about 23 to 24 hours a day, has now dropped to about 17 hours a day, and our Dial-A-Ride ridership has gone down a bit, not this much. Because those folks prefer to use that service. The other thing we found is that for some reason, and in your cities, you may notice the same thing, the school bus won't pick you up if you live within a certain distance. Even if that distance is way too far to walk and it's pouring down rain, they still won't pick you up. So we made sure we hit most of our major schools, and high schoolers love our service. We get a lot of them that ride it in the morning to school, and a lot of them that use it to get to work. So we have a large high school population that also uses our service. So between those two groups, it's been very successful. The other group we have that uses it is our Hispanic folks. As you will know, they're not as trusting on other services, but the service, again, is free. Get on and off, don't have to worry about it. So it's great. So it's been incredibly successful, far more than I would have predicted, and it just continues to grow, which is fantastic. So the question is where are they going? And this cool heat map, if you look in there, and it's bright red, you'll see that's where people are going. We have 3 main stops that people go to. One, they go to the transit center to transfer, because you can get onto South Clackamas and go to Moala. You can get onto Smart System and go to Wilsonville. And of course, Wilsonville is going to connect you to the west or get you to Tualatin. You go all the way down to Woodburn, get on Chariots, head down to Sound, or you can go up to Oregon City, hop on TriMet, and head into the TriMet. So from the transit center in Camden, you can get all over the state if you want to. Just fantastic. And then, of course, Fred Meyer's. This is this area here, very, very popular. And then you have the high school over here, very popular. So the stores and the transfer center and the high school end up being the most popular and most used areas of that. So what do we want to do next? Well, the city is working on expanding what they call Area J. They're going to extend Walnut Street out, and that's going to build out, and that's here on the north side of the city. So we want to be able to hit that. And then we want to go two-way service. 30 minutes is not very long, but if you live at one end of the loop and you're going over, just a little ways down the road, you get off the loop, now you have to go all the way around to come back, right? Which it's not terrible, but it would be a lot better if you could go the short way back, just don't stick. So that's the next goal. And then eventually there's areas we can't cover, so we'd like to split the loop into a couple of different loops so that we can grab more of the city, or we can talk about going away from south on Holly Drive and say hey to most 6 areas. Yeah. There you go. Canby Loop, very successful service, and it's very popular. Yes, sir.
Todd, thanks for the presentation. Tell me about the frequency of the loop.
So we run it generally every 30 minutes, every 30 to 35. Drivers, they want to take breaks, lunch, so there's a couple of gaps in there, but for the most part, it's about every 30 minutes.
Okay. So you run it for 30 minutes for how many hours a day again?
12 hours a day.
12 hours a day. Wow.
Cool. Yeah, it's fantastic. If you don't have one in your city, and I will tell you that Clackamas County providers took the idea of stiff to heart. Expand service, get more access, and all 4 of us, including Clackamas County, which I call it fair. They're not technically a transit provider, but they provide transit. All expanded services in these ways. We started the loop. Wilsonville started a number of services. Sandy has started several services. Clackamas County started services, and all of them have been very successful. All of them have allowed people to reach more areas. I know Wilsonville is working right now on getting people all the way to Clackamas Town Center, and Sandy is bringing people all the way to Clackamas Town Center from Sandy. So it's been incredibly impressive to see what these small providers, and we're little, and we still have done quite a bit to connect people to the region.
What's Canby's population?
18,900-ish.
Okay, that makes us even more.
Yeah,
So you mentioned your budget was, how much is your budget for the loop?
total budget, it's close to 800. We spent it's not that much. It's about 600. I'm doing all of that. It's really hard because with Heidi and I, our salaries spread out through the entire thing. The actual loop itself is about 300,000 just for the operations. And then you have fuel maintenance on top of that. It's close to 100,000. You're probably pushing on. I mean, to the tilt that.
You're spending all your STIP money on it.
No, we're spending 75% of the STIP money on the loop and about 25%, give or take, on Saturday service on the 99X.
Oh.
So
How far do you find that people will walk to the stop rules?
Not super far, but I think the standard is about 3/4 of a mile. We tried to do a half mile when we built this to try to look at maps to see where the population centers were, try to keep it within a half mile. The city of Canby is really small, it's very boxy. And so hitting those population centers so people are only walking at most a half mile make a big difference.
Good. And how many riders a day go to the how many Canby residents, will wake up here, go to the transit center at the Canby each day?
What's our charter ship out?
Wait,
It's about 250 on average.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we bring people in from Woodburn, quite a few people in from Woodburn, and we bring a lot of people out from Woodburn. A lot of people that leave Canby leave actually the Oregon City route, more so than anything, because they can get to Charlotte. Also, the Willamette Falls Hospital is up there, so we get work done.
Sorry if I missed this. How many vehicles do you have rotating through during the day?
So we have generally 7 active vehicles during peak. We have about 15 total vehicles.
You talked about contracting a lot of people, including drivers. Does that mean you contract with a company that provides you with a collection of drivers, or individual drivers are contracted?
We contract with a company. So so every 6 years, I go out with RFP and get bids from companies, and the reality is the companies keep the same drivers the previous company had. There is a provision in law that requires them to attempt to keep those folks. So generally, it's the same drivers, and they transfer company to company. We've had this current company for 5 years. We're gonna have to go back out for RFP next year. Prior to that company had been here for 10 years.
So you're not constantly trying to find new drivers. You're finding a company that will keep you steady.
Yeah, I don't deal with drivers. They deal with drivers. They hire, they fire, they maintain the drivers. I did that for far too long at Tremont, so I'm happy to pop it on.
All right, thank you, Todd.
You don't get to ask it, is this?
I first met Todd when he was in, I helped him out with some things, and we just developed this friendship, and he's part of the coalition he spoke about. I know you recently, and this just does my heart good, you recently updated your transit master plan.
Yes.
And as part of that update, you survey your residents and you have asked them certain questions. And so I was just curious, what was the #1 destination that your residents were interested in?
Did anybody guess what the #1 destination our residents were Wilsonville, yeah. I mean, if we weren't already serving Oregon City, then maybe it was that. But there is a need. Wilsonville, as you know, is a very large employment hub, and it also connects to the west side of the world. So there is a strong desire to get us over that. Right now, Dwight comes in about every hour and a half with his service. So we'd like to bring that down to about every half an hour service, so that we have to go back and forth. And according to our transit master plan, that will probably be a very successful service.
Michelle.
When you withdrew from TriVet, was that a vote of the citizens or the business that's here?
So I wasn't here at the time. So
I know it was a long time
So
ago.
I'm not 100% sure. I believe that was the city council, and the way I know Boring voted themselves out of the China district, right?
Damascus did
But
too, yeah.
well, yeah. But the way it ended up working is you sort of leave the system and sort of don't. So we have an IGA with China in perpetuity.
Right.
That says that we will operate service here And we will continue to operate service here. And should we ever not operate service here, the TriMet has the right to take it over. So,
Okay, and did you have a program in place with the
No, they-
withdrawal happened?
no,
Do you know the time period between withdrawal and something
I
like
think it took
that?
about a year.
Oh, was it?
So I think it was your,
If I remember correctly, I think it was a full-on, like, start from scratch.
yeah,
The city administrator, it was very similar to, at the time, the city administrator and council, we were getting service of one bus out in the morning and then back out, like pick people up and then in the evening drop them off, and it just wasn't enough. And so that's what kind of started that conversation. So it did take an act of the council, and I think redirecting of some of those statewide funds to us to figure out how to make that all work.
I know there had to be a state approval at the state level and trying to fit it. I think their board had to vote on it. And then the IJ.
Did Canby and Wilsonville businesses complain about having to pay less payroll tax?
At the time, to be fair, at the time it was the same. So when we came out, that was TriMet's payroll tax level at $6. And then when Smart came out, it was at $5.
Yeah, fine.
And, I don't think there's a single one of the Clackamas County providers that raised their payroll tax in the 20 some odd years. All that. They believe Sandy's at $6, and I believe South Clackamas is at $5.
We're at 5.
Oh, I don't know if that'll last forever, the cost of, but just to give you an idea of the cost of operation, just to pay for the bodies to drive these buses, which when I started 6 years ago, we were at $45 to $50 an hour. I just got the bill, we're at $96 an hour. So we've seen this massive spike personnel costs. And it's personnel costs between the wages and the benefits, personnel costs, and it's skyrocketing.
Now, as a city, we're looking at some other efficiencies where, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, to fuel station, the buses will have access to.
Yeah, we can, they're trying to build a fuel station. Fuel's not bad right now, thankfully, it's come down a bit. We're also reducing we're taking some buses, turning them into vans for dollar rate services. So dollar rate has decreased a little bit. The vans, they get better fuel. We don't go through tires quite as terrible. They don't cost a small fortune. Buses are expensive. The last 35-foot bus I bought was $640,000. For when your budget is $2.3,640,000 a lot. We get grants from the federal government to buy those vehicles.
Yeah.
It is a public, this is the one thing I always tell everybody, especially in elected folks, this is a public service. This is not a business. So a lot of people look at the numbers and go, well, can we charge more fares? Yeah, but you'll lose ridership. This is a public service. You will never make money. You will never make the money up. You will never be profitable. You will never make this system work. If that was possible, then the city wouldn't have to be in the business of providing public transportation. A private company would be providing public transportation. So it's a public service. I mean, we have folks that would not get to dialysis if we did not have a bus to take them to dialysis. We have folks that would not get to work. During the pandemic and also during the major ice storms, we were the only way some people were able to get to their jobs. So it's very important service for buses.
So I was around when the Boring area was petitioning to get out. At the time, there was zero regular service, fixed route service at all out there. The only thing that was out there was lift service, I believe.
It was 84 used to run out there. Yeah, it ran once in the morning and once in the evening.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought.
Yeah.
But the business clearly said we're not getting anything for their money. I think that was the argument that was being made. So we watched that happen. So I was the only one I was aware of. I didn't know when and how. I think it was before. I think Warren was the last one, if I recall right.
Yeah, and again, they just opted out of the Trident system. So the difference in the other cities is they wanted to run their own system. Where Oregon is just, we just don't want it here, so just stop the tax. It's fun.
Boring, it's too boring.
Interestingly enough, they now have service provided by the city of Sandy. So down 212, they stopped in Boring. So if you want to go to Sandy or back in Sound Center, that service operates. And it's funded by STIP. But
Any other questions for Todd? Let's you sure. Todd, thank you, sir. Next is Jamie Stickler, Economic Development Director. I, again, am very proud of the three people who get to present to you tonight. And Dawn, and Todd, and Jamie, they do a lot of the heavy lifting as to where Canby has been and where it's going as part of our staff. And so Jamie has been a tremendous asset in our development team. She had a couple of really good mentors, I think, that can come through and exposed her to a lot for her to be able to then step in and grow the role the way that she has. And a lot of our success in our industrial park and what we see going on in our downtown, I do attribute to Jamie, and her also going to help her to make Candy grow and the success that it is. So, Jamie, or yours.
Thank you. That's quite the intro. So I'm Jamie Stickle. I'm the Director of Economic Development, and I also serve as the Communication Specialist for the city. I've been with the city for 13 and a half years. So if you put Don's time and Todd's time, they almost reached the amount of time that I've been here, which means I've seen a lot and I've been able to do a lot. And if you're thinking, man, she looks like she was outside directing traffic in the rain today, you would be correct. We have our first Thursday night market that happens every first Thursday downtown. And so we were out there directing traffic and having vendors, and people still come out and have fun. I say that not necessarily as an explanation, but really as a way to start this discussion today. One of the things that we do in our department, which is myself and Tyler Nizer, who's our economic development and tourism specialist, we try and use WIT in everything that we do. And I think that WIT in the traditional sense, of course, but also WIT as an acronym for whatever it takes. And I think economic development in general is a little bit of whatever it takes. There's been, times where things seem like the mountain is too high, and we continue to work and continue to fight. And I would be remiss if I didn't note partnerships with our planning department that helps. We're a very good team. Our teams are very good teams. Partnerships with our transit department and others throughout the city, which helps us with those bigger lifts while we're trying to make sure our downtown is thriving and our industrial park has grown. So, okay, go ahead. So I'm going to start with a look back, and while I've been here for a long time, you have to go into the actual Wayback Machine with me. So the first couple of slides are a little wordy, and so I apologize for that, but I wanted to kind of give an idea of how we planned for the Canby Pioneer Industrial Park. Planning began in 1973. So, today when we hear people say, oh, well, there's big businesses and I don't like the trucks and the noise, and I understand that. I probably wouldn't if it was near my home or near where I, grew up in farmland. But also this planning, it predates not just my time in Canby, but my time on Earth. They created something called an interim general plan, and it was adopted in 1976, and it brought people together so that we could start to begin to think about what we wanted Canby to look like. Comprehensive plans usually look 20 years out. We are using some of these plans to this day, but with that great planning, kind of planning that Don is working on, that's how we got to where we are. 1978, council appointed a 9-member citizens advisory committee, which met with staff and consultants over an 18-month period. And I'm sure that many of you have gone through processes like that in your own cities. And it's really the community that helps to drive these conversations. And sometimes they are at odds, but really that's the way that we move things forward, is bringing people to the table. 1980, draft comprehensive plan. 81, the comprehensive plan was adopted. And in 1984, the comprehensive plan amendment was adopted. And that is the one that we still use today. So Don, as he said, is in the process of updating that. We also worked with Clackamas County back in 1987, and they did an industrial attraction plan for the land that is now the Canby Pioneer Industrial Park. An industrial area master plan in 1998. So we were proactive in starting to plan what we wanted to look for: maximum flexibility, a variety of site sizes, extensive utilities, relatively flexible industrial zoning standards. And we used Clackamas County industry cluster efforts to focus on recruitment. In 1999, we created an urban renewal district. So we used that urban renewal district to help to lay the groundwork, quite literally, for what is now our industrial park. In 2006, there was a development strategy for Canby industrial lands. And so this was to assess the competitiveness and to successfully market to buyers and tenants. Research, and this part I love, is just including interviews with other professionals in economic development, industrial brokers who are familiar with Canby, and there are industrial brokers that I work with today that were part of that 1980 master planning. They've sold and resold property 3 times, sometimes, some of them. And small business owners, because it's easy to think what happens downtown and what happens in the industrial park, 2 different things: business owner versus business owner. Except when those industrial businesses come and they bring 100, 200, 300 people to our community, you gotta eat, you gotta shop, and I want them to spend that money here in town. Did I mention it first Thursday where we like to invite people downtown to spend some money? We developed a Canby for strategy to improve the market position. So the development of community consensus, planning and providing infrastructure, coordinating with others to market Canby, improving marketing materials, and hiring and designing permitting staff. So I wanted to show this picture. It's obviously in your packets, but this is what it looked like in 2008. And frankly, we had quite a few businesses or planned businesses, but there's a lot of green and brown in that because it was farmland. And then this is what it is from today. And the reason that these 2 areas are highlighted is because they are under development currently. We have OLCC that's coming to our industrial park, and then a speculative building called Sequoia Logistics, which is a Trammell Pro development. And I wanted to show that just the change over time. It's easy when you're going through it, as I'm sure all of you feel in the work that you do. It's easy to say, oh yeah. And then when you look back, you go, wow, we did a lot of things. And these are projects, not just the big ones, but the small ones too, that I'm very proud of. And they're relationships that bring people, it's interesting, you come to Canby and you start to enjoy when you're coming to work. And we've had, industrial property owners, partners, more than one, buying in Canby because they want to be close to work, that's great, but also close to what is going on here. And I think there's something very special going on in Canby. Site readiness. So we work with Business Oregon to do regionally significant industrial sites and certified shovel ready. So that's making sure there's not brownfields or things that would prohibit or inhibit development. Urban renewal investments in infrastructure, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. And then marketing. Back in the day, we had the Canby Business Revitalization and Development. That was an organization that worked on development here downtown and then also in the industrial park. And then eventually that organization was brought into the city, and that was our economic development. The 2 women that worked for that was at the time, Catherine Comer. Her last name has since changed, but she was at Clackamas County for a long time, and then Jamie Jonk, who was at Clackamas County, and then now is in Woodburn. And so their efforts, again, the building blocks that got us to the developments that we have today. So Canby Urban Renewal funded infrastructure. We provided funding for infrastructure within the Pioneer Industrial Park, and we incrementally built roads and installed utilities needed to make industrial sites development ready. One of the things that I think is really interesting is, there always has to be a first business. And so one of our first businesses, or the first business, was Shimatsu, and they still operate in Canby today. And one of the things that they make is like microscopes that go very, very detail oriented. And frankly, if you're watching CSI or some of those other shows and you see that might be built here in Canby, in at Shimatsu, and they just celebrated 25 years, and that was a couple of years ago. So pretty soon we're going to be at 30 years, and they talked about when they built in Canby that the road was gravel. There wasn't a road, but over time, with their development and others, and great planning by our city council, we were able to build roads, put in utilities, attract those developments, and really grow our industrial park. So Sequoia Parkway, the Sequoia Parkway, if you're familiar with Canby, Highway 99 runs through town. Sequoia Parkway is over by where Fred Meyer is, and it takes you back to the industrial park. And we actually extended that with this bridge over here, and that was in 2013. It's a 3-lane bridge over the Oregon Pacific Railroad line. We paved that street extension, new sidewalks, utilities, connects from Highway 99E to Southeast 13th Avenue. And again, when we put that development in, beautiful flowers next to it. And those flowers are gone, unfortunately for the flowers. But a development is occurring there. It's a 780,000 square foot building. It's a speculative building. And someone asked me recently, well, why would someone do something like that? It's risky. Yeah, it is risky. But people who bet on Canby have been successful. And we have become a community that has a track record of being able to attract businesses and have the kinds of infrastructure or, downtown, or even, looking again to my colleagues, we've got the Canby Loop. We have our planning department, which will help literally walk someone through step by step by step through the process that is necessary. And so, we built this believing that it would happen. And 2013, it was easy to believe it might not ever happen. It might not be a gravel road, but flowers in an industrial park are great, but buildings are too, and that's what generates our property taxes. And so we're really lucky that Trammell Crow Development has bet on Canby, frankly, and that they believe that we have the draw here in this community to be able to support that development, whether it's one large business or it could be broken up into four other businesses. Hazeldale Way, so we put in a local road with utilities in place and included the city's first first stoplight, which is at Hazeldale and Sequoia. So right where Fred Meyer is, Clackamas County operates that light for us. 4th Avenue was an east-west connection from Redwood Street to Sequoia Parkway. It provides alternative access route to Highway 99 at Pine Street. And you'll notice that a lot of these roads, it's common. Oh, Sequoia Parkway and Hazeldale. We built the roads so that they connect, so that then when people came to Canby, there were those actual connections that would move people through the community, provide opportunity, and help our industrial park be successful. And then finally, Walnut Street. We talked about Walnut Street Extension. So this is the first part of Walnut Street, which is in place currently. It was funded with the local improvement district and coordinated by the Urban Renewal Agency. And the city also purchased, we call it the green property, but it's a property that we included in the Canby Urban Renewal District. It is located right outside city limits, but inside the urban growth boundary. And the city bought that in 2019 because we were betting, you're betting on the fact that we were going to be able to acquire the property to build a road that would connect our industrial park to Highway 99. Partners in site selection. And I've been accused once or twice of being a cheerleader, but I think one of the best things about being a cheerleader is usually you can get people on board. And I've talked about some of my colleagues tonight, some of the other departments that we work with. We also work with Business Oregon. They send us leads. Clackamas County is great at community development. They are awesome partners. Cindy Moore, she predates me, and if you have not met her, she makes me seem like a calm person. So she's a wonderful person. Oregon Economic Development Association, Greater Portland Inc. Again, they send site selectors. They send businesses looking for land. Then we work directly with site selectors who might be out looking to see what's available, developers like Trammell Crow Company, real estate brokers, and I know I said this in the beginning, but there are a couple of real estate brokers that have worked in Canby for probably 35 years. One just finally retired, and I think he misses it because I hear from him still, how's this project going? And I know he watches some of our city council meetings, but they were instrumental in being able to explain how we got to where we were. Sometimes explaining, some of the hiccups that we had along the way. They really helped us to sell that story to me when I was looking to learn more, and then I was able to use that information to help sell Canby. And then local and regional businesses. One of our businesses in the industrial park is Crusoe Produce, and it's a business that I'm very proud chose Canby. The way that we got connected with Crusoe Produce, and I'm not just saying this because you're in the room and that you're the chair, but our mayor knew one of the owners, and they set up a meeting. Matt Weber. And he wanted to have Crusoe Produce here in Canby because he lives in Canby on his shorter commute. But they weren't just looking at Canby. You know, Canby, right now we don't have a lot of land, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but they were looking at small cities close to Highway 99, proximity to where they needed to be. And one of the things was that they liked Canby, not just because one of them lived here, but they liked what they had seen. And they did not have an easy go through the land use process, not because of our planning department, predates you even. But you know, they were looking and we were hoping, and there's a way, I think that economic development, using that WIP, whatever it takes, I chased them out of this, I wasn't chasing them out. I followed them out of this room after a planning commission meeting that didn't go the way that they had hoped it would go. And I said, just give me a shot. Just give me like 24 hours. And they said, sure. What are you going to do? And I said, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what we have to offer, but I'm going to start talking to the people because the partnerships are so important. So I talked to our planning director at the time and I said, what does it cost for an appeal, for a land use appeal? And he told me how much it costs. I said, how do I waive that? He goes, well, it's not me. And I said, okay, I go to the city administrator. And I went to the city administrator and I said, listen, I think that there's a way to maybe help this process, and that maybe if they were able to get a little bit more information, that people would understand what they're trying to do and why it fits with our code. And our city administrator at the time, luckily, he bet on me and he said, sure, we'll waive that fee. And I got to call and say, we're gonna waive the fee. And they actually didn't even have to use that. But that was one of the things that they knew, that we were as interested and invested in them coming here as they were invested in Canby. And it's a business that I'm proud of. Now 2 out of the 3 owners lives here. Many of their employees live here, and they have great partnerships. One of the first tours that we took, we're walking through and they're taking, watermelon and putting it aside. And I said, well, what do you do with the watermelon that you can't sell to the stores? He said, well, we give it to the Oregon Food Bank. And I said, great, we got a food bank in Canby. Have you ever heard of the Canby Center? And the gentleman said, we haven't, we'd love to know that. And I said, great. And I called Ray, who's the executive director of the Canby Center, and connected them. And the next email I got was a list of the pallets and of food that had been delivered. And that partnership, that continues today. And that development, that business, if Mayor Hodson hadn't said, hey, I'll just connect you with this person, they might have gone to Donald or to some other city, but we're lucky to have them here and they're great partners in that.
Jimmy, could you take a question? We have someone online.
Oh,
It was a late.
Oh, okay. So there's no one online, no questions. Okay. Jimmy, carry on.
thank you.
As you were.
Oh, we do have a comment. Thank you. I am passionate and I'm over caffeinated always at all times. So looking into the future, and I know that Don talked a little bit about the land use planning that we're doing and how we're going to be moving things forward, but go ahead. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the industrial projects that are underway. So we have Sequoia Logistics, which I mentioned already, 780 square feet of land in the, a 780 square foot development in our industrial park. It will be the biggest development in our industrial park, and it's speculative. And they're betting on Canby. Terminal Pro Company, who also developed our Columbia Distributing. So they got to know who we were, and they got to learn how our process was. And even some of that a little bit predates me, but what it did is it created that partnership and that understanding that when we want to move things forward, they know who to call, whether that's Don and his team, myself and my team. And they were at our city council meeting last night. They know that they show up for Canby because they know that Canby is a good place to continue to grow their developments. And then OLCC, they had their groundbreaking April 16th. It's going to be just under a 350,000 square foot building with warehouse and office. And it's a relocation of their distribution operations in Milwaukee. Walnut Street Extension. So I hit on the Walnut Street Extension just a little bit, but it's a transportation project. It's critical to the circulation and mobility in Canby. And so I'm going to step to this side. So here is the Walnut Street that I was talking about. It would fade kind of into this way. Columbia Distributing is here. And over here is where OLCC is going. So, you know, one of the things I noted is we do have some residents that live near our industrial park. And as the industrial park has continued to grow, so has traffic. And so how do we move people from the industrial park to Highway 99 with the least amount of negative impact? And so that's where this extension road has come through. We've been talking about an extension road since before my time. It was Auto Road, it was Hazeldale, and our city administrator, Rick Robinson, who was one of those mentors that Mayor talked about in my life, he had the wherewithal to say, let's buy a property, let's start that first piece. And so we bought this property right here, which would be right where Walnut Street and Southeast First Avenue connect, and worked with those property owners to basically start with the understanding that we're going to build this road and we want them to be part of it. One of the reasons that it kind of snakes through is because it was the way that we could get the road from the industrial park to Highway 99 with the least amount of negative impact on those properties. When Todd was talking about Special Area J, that's this land out here. And there are plans, not just, you know, plans like in 1979, we're going to do this, but we have a developer who has plans to put residential and unique residential that will fill gaps that we don't, or gaps that we have, and residents that need to have homes in Canby. And it will also potentially open up this Highway 99 for business development, so commercial development, which is exciting for me, of course. It's going to alleviate congestion. It's a direct truck circulation away from the neighborhoods. And just some project highlights. It's an extension road. It includes bike lanes, sidewalks, travel lanes. It's going to be a 74-foot road, so it will have all of those things, and some of the utilities will be in place. We have a boring project, not you know, boring, but actually boring under the road, under the railroad, so that we could bring sewer, so that we can connect that. There's a business over here, the first business, so we can connect that to the city sewer. They're on septic now. A new traffic signal is planned for Highway 99, and we're going to be improving safety by relocating some of the private driveways that are on Highway 99. They will then connect into the road. And this project is exceptionally exciting to me. Last night, the city, or the Urban Renewal Agency, approved an easement for that green property. So we're working on getting all of those pieces put in place, working with the county, which have been great supporters and a great connection. And then we also, at the city council meeting, approved the intergovernmental agreement with Clackamas County that we can build the road, city road, outside city limits within the county, and that we would take jurisdiction. So we approved that last night as well. Those are two really big pieces that are going to help move this project forward. Very, very soon, we're going to have the ODOT approval for the new signal. And we're also working with our engineer firm to get the easements from the other, I think there's about 4 property owners. I think we're the 5th for this road. So the hope is in 2027, we're going to have a road, and we're going to put the loop on, maybe. Urban growth boundary expansion. So if you were to ask me what I needed here in economic development, and especially as we talk about the industrial park, I am proud to say we're running out of land. It's a good problem to have. It's a problem though. And as we work with the planning department and our community on what the future of Canby looks like, more industrial development is something that's needed. It helps to bring in our property taxes. This is not how we're expanding. This is a map that shows a preliminary study area. So we studied about 1,500 acres, and we need roughly 500. That includes some housing, might be a little bit more than that as final numbers. That project's underway, that we're updating the comprehensive plan and transportation system plan. And then the urban growth boundary expansion in the near future. And that's gonna help to address the need for more housing and employment lands here in Canby. And so finally, I'll leave you with some lessons learned. And if you build it, they will come. And that's a great saying, and a lot of people know it. But I would say that the caveat is eventually. Development takes time. Whether that's the development of an industrial park where we start to dream in 1973 about what the future of Canby can look like, and then making that happen years later, it takes time. Or sometimes just development in general. The speculative building that I was talking about, Sequoia Logistics, That was first approved in 2021, I believe. And so those entitlements have been there for a long time, and people say, nothing's happening, right? I don't see it. And then when it starts happening, they say it's too loud, it's too noisy, it's too dirty, it's too, well, I understand. But those are one of the things that we have to give, because as I start to think about what makes Canby so special, it's the people. And people who bet on Canby and choose Canby, those are my kind of people. Cool. So another takeaway, it's not what you know, but who you know. So I said assemble the A team. And I talked a little bit about team here. We're lucky, our leadership team of directors, we are a pretty close-knit group. Most of us have been here 5 years or more. I think there's 3 or 4 of us who have been here 13 and a half years or more. So I'm one of the longest standing, but I'm I have the least amount of years. But that A team, whether it's Clackamas County, Business Oregon, mayor bringing in somebody, or our local team, here at the city. And then luck is what happens when preparations means opportunity. Years of planning has made Canby what it is today. And as economic development goes, we like to see boots on the ground, heads in beds. There's lots of different terms for it. The planning work that our planning department does currently, or has done in the past, has really paved the way for us to be able to be where we're at today. So with that planning and looking forward, that's how we're going to have more land for industrial development and housing. That's what's going to bring more jobs to Canby, more people to Canby, more people who are going to bet on Canby. And I think if you bet on Canby, you're probably going to win. So I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to speak with you all tonight. I love Canby. It's got my heart. And just thank you so much for your time. I'll take any questions if you have questions.
Well, Jimmy, your energy and excitement is contagious. So I think you have our attention. So great job.
Thank you very much.
Mayor?
I would say tonight's whole meeting is something that we really, and I'm glad it's all video, because we need to share it with our local staffs and cities. It's a great lesson in lessons learned and success and how to see. One question for you. You talked about originally the idea was for maximum flexibility. And I see that you show the patterns of how things went in. I'm just kind of curious, over the years, what sort of changes have you seen in the kinds of businesses? Do they come here and settle and stay? Do they come and go? Is it agriculture? Is it technical? What do you see in areas that can go in small sites? Because so much of the talk around the metro area is large site stuff. And you're finding successful business growth in individually sited places. So what can you share about that?
I think that's a great question. I spoke about Shimatsu. They're a business that's been here for over 25 years. I think that the businesses that have moved into our industrial park largely have remained the same. Sometimes they might change ownership, but that's not necessarily, I don't want this property anymore and I'm going to sell it. It's more, I'm going to sell my company because I'm going to make hopefully a boatload of money, and that changes. We have a mix in the sectors that we have. So we have some metals manufacturing, we have some healthcare. So again, I talked about Shimatsu. We have VATA, VATA. They make the I don't know if you call them dummies, but where you learn to do CPR, they make those here in our industrial park, which I think is cool. But then we also do have some ag businesses. So we have Crusoe Produce that I talked about. We also have Dragonberry Produce, and they do more specialty items. The great thing is they're just across the street from each other. So sometimes they sell back and forth to each other. The businesses, I would say overall, especially in the industrial park, they've largely stayed. And I think that is a testament to the planning and the work that has happened in Canby, but also, it can be it grows on me. When I came here, I thought I was going to be here for 1 year. I was going to get experience. It was going to be great. I was going to move on. I was going to take on the world. And then 1 year turned into 3 years. And at 5 years, I thought, I think this is my place, and I think that happens to people, even if you're just coming here to work. There's a lot of great things that happen. And so we have seen some of those sectors, and they're very engaged in lots of different ways. Whether that's working with some of our city sponsored events or other community events, community organizations. I think our businesses, whether it's healthcare, metals, agriculture, really, they are invested in Canby And, Crusoe Produce, the cool thing about that business is that they are a business that is generational. So Sam Crusoe is not the first Sam Crusoe to own Crusoe Produce. In fact, I think it was his grandfather that started it. And they had 74 years in Tualatin where they had property there and they leased property and they grew their business. And they came here in Canby to make an investment for the next 74 years. And now when, I'm a Rotarian and we had somebody come from Crusoe Produce to speak not too long ago at one of our Rotary at one of our Rotary lunches, and the person who showed up, I didn't know him, but his last name was Crusoe, and it's the next generation. And so it's great because it's not just, oh, we're going to come here and we're going to, as soon as it doesn't fit our needs, they're investing in this community in ways that we understand, and probably also in ways that we don't get to see, but that are felt citywide.
And Jamie, if I can, just to piggyback on that, so one of the other, so Shimatsu was the first, and then we had Pioneer Pump was the second, and they grew here and they moved into the industrial park. They've changed hands,
right?
I think 3 times now.
Something like that.
The Jerry Turner who owned Pioneer Pump sold it because he just was getting out of the pump business and sold it to a bigger company. But they stayed here. They kept that business here and they've been great community partners. I think a lot of what we're seeing now is there's just been a lot of new. So it's hard to say like how long, Columbia just opened not too long ago. Stanton Furniture, Caruso, Dragonberry, this is their home. The owner and her brother have said, we're not going anywhere. We're staying in Canby, and they've expanded twice, and there's plans for a third expansion of their business. And so we're seeing that kind of a commitment, but in terms of turning hands or, we haven't seen too much of that yet. And I hope that we don't. I mean, if we do, I think it's going to be I'm selling the business to somebody else.
And I think the other thing to note is that a lot of these businesses, they're not just choosing Canby, but they're investing for today and for the future. So Columbia Distributing came and they built a 513,000 square foot building, and they have already the plans and the land to add on 250,000 more square feet. Crusoe Produce bought land that they could expand on that site. Dragonberry Produce, like Mayor Hodson said, they just finished their second phase and they already have the land so that when they need to do the third phase, they can grow here. And then also I realized one part of your question that I don't think I fully answered a little bit, but one of the things that we've seen changing, especially when the pandemic was underway, was a lot of distribution, right? Warehouse and distribution. We're talking about large parcels of land and even that speculative development at one point. So it started as a speculative development, and then that land was sold to Amazon, and Amazon was going to put a facility here, not the size of Woodburn, but something to support that, right? Because they create a hub and they make it smaller hubs, and then those smaller hubs go to smaller hubs, and that's how you get something in 4 hours after you order it. And then they changed the ways that they were developing, and so Amazon decided not to develop here in Canby. They also, just to make sure that I'm being fair to Canby, they also chose not to develop in other cities across the nation. So it's not, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't chase them out, but they sold that land back to Trammell Crow and Trammell Crow Company. And I know I keep saying it, but they invested and continue to invest because they know that it's going to be something that's going to pay off in the long run. So it's been interesting to see those changes, and whether it's a large business like Columbia Distributing, or it's something a little bit smaller like Crusoe Produce, they're very invested and very engaged and can be in lots of different ways.
I think what we're going to see, Mayor Milch, too, is all the big, I think the Trammell Crow development is the last large parcel.
Correct. In
the industrial park. So now it's a matter of looking at the 2 to 5 acre parcels and what can be put together, or is that could be more of that flexible business space, a light industrial, or something that's not quite as big, but allows a business to go from their garage to another space, or from their barn to a larger space. And that's where we're at. That'll be the next piece of that.
The largest parcel that we have in our industrial park is 6.7 acres. And so we've got a lot of 2 and 1 and even some of the land, we just kind of did a, back of the napkin equation to see how much land we had left, because someone said, well, we've got this much land. And I said, where? I'd love to know where, because I'd fill it just if I could. And then it's like, oh, well, if that includes the OLCC property, that's underway. So that's out, this is out. We got down to 55 acres and that's 1 and 2 acre parcels, some of which is not even within the city limits. It needs to be annexed in. So there's still some room to grow. But when we have someone who has needs, if Stanton Furniture came to us tomorrow, if they didn't already have land here, they came to us tomorrow, we unfortunately have to turn it away. I don't want to do that. I want businesses to come here and I want them to invest here.
Just a time check, just to let you know, we're doing a great job. We have a question from Mayor O'Neill. We have a question online too.
Okay.
There's a Mayor O'Neill.
I was just wondering, because we're facing this in Wilson, do you have problems with expanding industrial areas because either the parcel size or multiple owners of the property?
Yeah, I would say
that attractive larger.
We one of the things that has been, let me figure out how to answer that. With the parcel size, we have those smaller pieces and some of them are near each other and could be put together for something a little bit bigger. When we talk about like the OLCC building, that I think is 2 different parcels that they purchased. Columbia Distributing, I think it's 4 different property owners to begin with. And so the land has been, our property owners have been willing to work together and with developers or real estate brokers to make that land work so that we had some of those larger parcels. And now, we've got 2 acre parcels right next to each other. So I could see something like that being used for 1 development, or it could be used for 2. There's a lot of flexibility and frankly, a lot of the people that own land in the industrial park, they're all Canby families. They know each other, right? They were, some of them were there in 1973 making that plan. And so they work together quite well and we do whatever we can to help facilitate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Matt. Matt, your hand's up.
You muted, sir.
No, it's not. Sorry, accident.
Okay, so we have Mark. You talked about partnerships. And also I'm seeing is great growth, both for our citizens, residential, but you also have all the arterial flows of cars, trucks, transportation, all this that used like that. You have wonderful freeways or good travel arterials going south and thus going west out to I-5. What about partnership that helps with arterial flows going north towards 205 those by and like for south? We partner with rock, like partnering with down there, partnering with Oregon City to look at future planning of those kind of transportation.
You kicked it off with partnerships. That's when I would bring in my planning directors and I would say, we got a question. Yeah.
Great question. We're also doing our transportation system plan update at the same time as the comprehensive plan update, and Clackamas County is just starting their transportation system plan. And so that relationship, I would say it's a strong relationship, including the fact that Clackamas County, previous to our transportation system plan update, was actually looking at Barlow and Art on the south end of town as how to relieve that situation in that location. So at 99 at Barlow and Art specifically, they did a preliminary study down there in that area, which would be related to us directly because that would relieve a lot of the congestion that we're facing in Canby without perhaps the need for a flyover over the Malone River, which is a really expensive project. But I think that relationship piece, especially with the county, is really important. Not that the one with ODOT is not. Funding for ODOT, as you probably know, is tight, and that I think there was this concerted effort during tolling during that review process, which we appreciated that there were there were pros and cons to that. There were some cons about diversion and increased traffic congestion to our corridor, but the pros were that they were gonna handle like Haynes Road, which is going towards Oregon City, and do some sort of roundabout at that location as part of the mitigation. That conversation has kind of gone off radar since that, not to say we're all in favor of tolling, but that was a connectional piece there. But we clearly are interested in the partnership with the county. That's an important one. And there is a really strong relationship, as Jamie was talking about, with the county. They're a good partner. And I think they've really helped in the conversation here, including the local road system here. Many of the roads are county roads still that we're driving on through the city. You would think they're city roads, but that partnership is there as well. So there is an ongoing dialogue around that. It's just primarily a funding constraint issue. I think the good news on the good news side of things is for what we have now, what we're projecting out at growth and those kinds of things, including the urban growth boundary, which is about another 430 acres of industrial land being expanded to the east, is the whole that our transportation system looks like it can adequately handle that. As Jamie was talking about the Walnut Street extension in particular, that relieves a significant amount of traffic, way more than you would think it would, including offsetting impacts on Haynes Road. And part of that partnership on Haynes Road is we actually did a fee in lieu for the city in coordination with ODOT and Clackamas County, so that we weren't worsening Haynes Road by the fact that developers, including Sequoia Logistics, are contributing to the construction of Walnut Street. So many developers have actually contributed to help us pay for that road as well.
And Haynes Road is, it's near our industrial park, if you're not familiar, and it is a county road. And that's what I was gonna say, is that partnership of why we spent time building and considering building Walnut Street is so that we can lessen that. And even just this week, and again, this speaks to partnership. Our city administrator had somebody who was unhappy. They lived near the industrial park because certain trucks were going on a road that they didn't think that they should. And so our public works director, who is, he predates me by about 8 years, but he went out to the gentleman's house and he met with us. And you know, that's kind of how we still get things done here. And I'm sure in lots of cities too, but he went to the man's house and said, listen, tell me what the problem is. Let's see how we can fix it. And with that, made that great connection. And he came back to the city administrator and I, and we were talking, and he said, you know, he's excited to hear more about this and learn more about that. And one of the things I noted was, you know, just like most of us, drivers of large trucks use GPS, right? They put it into their phone, or if they have a system, and those systems are created to do the path of least resistance. So sometimes that means Haynes Road gets used even when it shouldn't be. And we've found that with our industrial park and some of those businesses, we communicate great with them, and they communicate really well with their drivers, but they're probably also receiving things at their location, or selling things to people who aren't their drivers, and they don't have as much control. So they can say, we hope that you don't take Haynes Road, but you know, time is money, path of least resistance. How do we get it there as quickly as possible?
I'm bringing this up because of all of us here, the cities, so on, that myself and Kenny representing the incorporated, try to look at a really big picture, especially Kenny and myself, at a big picture and how it's affecting us outside the city. So that's where partnerships come in on longer term vision. I love what Kenny's done. I'm a grad, 72 grad from here. I've seen all this, but I love it. I love the fact that this forest group communicates. And I've gone around the state and watching someone, every eyewitness, someone seeing what goes on and how people don't communicate. So we do a good job. But I love the partnerships where Oregon City is talking to Beaver Creek, where Canby is talking to Oregon City. Everybody's talking to the county, and they all seem to have a good relationship. I love that. One factor that I see is usually a problem, and I know everyone here knows that, it's with the state. And having the vision that help us work forward with a lot of the stuff, so we can look at 2050.
Right.
And still be moving everything by the map. That's why I asked the question.
And you know, that's why I think going back to development takes time, right? Because there are times that our partners might not be as quick to get to the table as we are. They've got lots of projects and lots of ground to cover, and maybe budget constraints and what that looks like. One of the things that am proud of is our team works so well together here that I don't need to know who the transportation person is at the state, because I'll call our public works director or our planning director and say, who do you work with? This is what the problem is. This is what we need to advance. And they don't just say, oh, call, you know, the general number. They say, here's this person's cell phone number. They're out of town because they're, you know, they're camping. They're going to be back next Tuesday. We all have that. And, you know, if someone came to me and said, I've got some questions about economic development and we need to bring the county in, you know, I could probably call Cindy Moore right now on the phone and she'd answer, which is a testament to her and her commitment to the job that she does and the great work that she does. But also it hits on those partnerships of, you know, a lot of us have been doing this for a long time, and because Canby attracts us, I think a unique kind of person to work here, where we're community driven and we're connection driven. And luckily, you know, a lot of us are really big talkers. Like we talk a lot. And so we are able to make a lot of friends. And, you know, I think about that when we get to stand here before you and present, that now you guys are going to know who to call when you have a business that is looking for land in Canby, or you're interested to know about what the housing is going to look like, or, you know, how to do something like the loop in another community. So we're really lucky with that.
Jamie, thank you.
Mayor,
Tom,
thank you.
Todd,
Thank you all.
Okay. All right. Moving into our last section here this evening, everyone. Updates and business. JPAC update.
We don't really have we haven't had much substantive stuff going on at JPAC table, mostly just updates on the same plans that the area around our other tables, the regional housing coordination plan, the cooling corridor study, regional emergency transportation routes, all that good stuff.
Okay, perfect. Impact.
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same way.
Love it. Library task force update.
We really finished our work and sent it on to county staff, really, to kind of bring it to in some kind of form to the county commission. So not really much more for us.
Okay. Non-city member reappointments due February 2026. Ms. Lorenzini.
Yeah, this is something we do every 2 years. Cities get to do it during the even number of years, and non-city cities do it during the even number of years. We're asking non-city seats, so water, sewer, fire, hamlet, CPOs, to renew their membership before the February meeting. I'll be following up with each of you individually to talk about the process that's happening in the bylaws and how it can support you in that reappointment process.
Great, thank you. C4 meeting calendar is in the packet. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Jamie, when's which city is next on the list for mentioning the similar offsite kind of meetings?
Oh, that's a good question. The next offsite meeting will be in March. And we're still working out some of the logistics.
Is there a city that has raised their hands to do it?
There sure is.
Great.
That being said, in December, in lieu of a regular meeting, we're going to be holding an annual social event. And an invite for that should be going out next week, at least updating your calendar.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, the 2026 retreat date.
So last week when we sent out the meeting notice, we included a survey to test potential dates for the 2026 C4 retreat. Some of you may think, oh my gosh, we just finished the retreat. We're already planning for the next one. Yes, we are planning earlier. We sampled a variety of dates leading from May into the end of June. 17 people responded. That included a combination of sitting members, alternates, and staff. The dates that garnered the most support included May 15th and 16th, June 5th and 6th, and June 26th and 27th. Tonight I'm asking you if one of these 3 dates works better for the group, or if there are fatal flaws in one of them. After tonight, we'll circle back around with resort staff to start walking in dates. I'll use the alternate track say, no cheer, please. There's a partner odds it goes by.
I would just offer the later date in June is after the school year ends and just becomes more difficult. People's families, so those are the two dates probably preferential.
Okay, May 15th, 16th, and June 5th and 6th. So, they're not available. Is anyone not available on May 15th and 16th?
The only thing that we stress at that time will be an election, primary election, so I don't know who or what city or what anyone's got on the ballot for any type of initiatives, but be something to think about.
Yes, thank you. I will circle back around with the executive committee on Monday's evening to finalize the dates, and then we'll finalize the staff things.
All right. If you're wanting to hang out, you can. If you have questions for the presenters tonight, they'll be available for a little bit longer. On your way out, if you're driving through downtown, you can see what's left of our Halloween setup. We do a scarecrow event in our downtown. So take a look as you head out of town that way. If you go that way, it's just dark and rainy. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out.